Morning, welcome to Near Shores Prepping. I'm your host Greg. Very busy weekend with the rhetoric around the world. Russia, Ukraine. So let's get started. All right, for those of you that want to know the information, Russia's plans to attack Ukraine are still on. They will be attacking Ukraine from Crimea, from Belarus, and directly from Russia. So a three-sided attack is pretty much imminent. Now, what is Russia waiting for? The rest of the supplies to get the front line. They just moved up the medical units, meaning blood, triage, all that kind of stuff. So they are anticipating injuries and casualties on the Russian troops. Russia has approximately 175,000 troops amassed against Ukraine. Ukraine's standing army is approximately 145,000. Plus they also have another 30 or 40,000 in retired, another roughly 15,000 in militia and civilian troops and everything else. So they can put together a force. Ukraine has received anti-tank missiles. They have now received a few drones from Turkey, which are very effective according to all reports. So they're doing that. They only have like 150 jets or something, not near enough to go into combat with the Russian Air Force, but they still could put up a fight. Now, with all that being said, do the Ukrainians have a chance? No, not at all. Would the point of putting our troops, 8,500 troops, in harm's way make a difference? No, 8,500 is not going to do anything. NATO has said, the head of NATO has come out and said, we are not putting troops in Ukraine. Well, that's good news. Now, I want to ask you something. How many people in Ukraine, the civilians, have become preppers in the last 6 months? Do you think the civilian population, knowing that pretty much Russia invasion is going to be imminent, do you think that they might be saying, hey, I guess we better start stocking up on food and medicine and preparing ourselves for a bug out location, become a refugee, or stand and fight? How many of those people do you think are under mental stress, knowing that their enemies, the Russians, are on the border and invasion is likely? If we say we're going to cut off Nord Stream 2, we're going to issue these sanctions and everything else, Russia's going to say, I really don't give a crap. We're not going to have, one, a country that wants to become NATO. Number two, we are not going to allow them to get intermediate missiles, which they've already applied for, and maybe getting them, meaning 7 to 10 minute flight time from the Ukrainian border to the Russian border. So they're not going to allow that. They don't want Ukraine to become a member of the EU and to become more financial independent. Because if they start doing that, if they start getting the missiles, the drones, anti-tank missiles, in other words, bulking up, Putin is going to have to put more soldiers on the border to protect his country. Now, Ukraine is not going to invade Russia, but this is how he thinks. So he's going to have to spend more money in putting troops on the border to prevent an attack from Ukraine with the missiles, the drones, and everything else, which would bankrupt Russia. He's not going to do that. So he's not going to allow them to become NATO members. He's not going to allow them to build up their army. He's not going to allow them to become members of the EU. So what he'll probably do in all likelihood, according to Joe Biden, a small incursion would take 1/3 of the country closest to the Russian border and then negotiate and saying, we're going to claim this territory as a buffer zone and you guys are going to give it up. You're going to change your democracy and install governors that we control, which basically means surrender the country. If they don't do that, then they'll take another 1/3 of the country, probably up from the Crimea, and take it from there. And lastly, from Belarus, and take it from there and make the whole country surrender and dependent again upon Ukraine. So it's a no-win situation for anybody because casualties would be in the thousands in the first hour. Thousands in the first hour. I don't look for a long battle. Putin can't afford a long battle. If he sends troops in to occupy Ukraine, it's already been reported that 1/3 of the Ukrainian population is willing to take up arms and do an insurgency war, guerrilla warfare. Putin can't afford that because for every one civilian that takes up arms, it takes 10 soldiers to monitor and defend that. So he can't afford that. It'll be a swift, decisive battle, a lot of death, a lot of injury, and the reaction from the United States and NATO is to be determined. A lot of talk, a lot of talk. If they send 8,500 troops into Eastern Europe, meaning Poland, I don't know what that will exactly do. I don't know what NATO troops will do. I don't know the resolve of Europe to defend Ukraine if they even want to. If Putin says I'm shutting off the oil, the gas to European nations that are buying it from him now, and it's a cold winter, it's all of 10 degrees here, do you think they're going to say, hey, we're going to war with Russia because we got to stop the aggression? In the meantime, you're freezing to death in your own home? No, they're not going to do that. So that's where we're at on there. And I'll bet you the civilian population is under a lot of mental stress. I bet they're saying, give me all the food we can find. Hey, Joe Biden sent, MREs the last time with blankets. You got any spares? It's a nightmare. Think about how it could happen here. Are you prepared in case we face something like that? It could very easily happen. All right, that's the wrap up on Ukraine. I look for it to happen very quickly now that he's moved the medical units up front. It's going to happen. You don't go to war without having a frontline triage unit and blood and surgical gear. Once the rest of that arrives, it's on. Thanks for liking and subscribing. Please continue to do so. Get yourself right with God. Get baptized. Greg out.